In this video on cacti and succulent cultivation, I'm going to be talking about soil mixes. I'd like to make some suggestions as to how we can grow our plants using materials that are just that little bit more sustainable and how we can have less of an impact on the environment. Most of the products that we use have been stripped out of the earth, so inevitably the impact is great. So for example, stone, sand and gravel are all quarried. But one of the things that I feel we can do is at least try and use materials that have been harvested from within our own countries, so that they haven't travelled huge long distances and we can reduce our carbon footprint. So if you're able to use local materials, that's great. And I'm confident with our quarrying industry that to take materials from this country, I live in England, it's reasonably sustainable. And that's because we have very good legislation in place. That wasn't always the case, and some fantastic landscapes have been really degraded by quarrying. But that damage that led to the loss of plant life, etc., has resulted in the very legislation that we have to protect the environment. And there's good planning laws in place. So for example, now when quarries come to the end of their lives, they're converted to other use. And for example, that might include the development of nature reserves. So I'm happy to take materials from this country. So I have grit, horticultural sand, and this is different to building sand and beach sand in that it's been washed so it's free of salts. And I also use gravel. Those are my well-drained substrates, and they make up 50% of my compost. Other well-draining material that some people choose to use includes Vermiculite and Perlite, and the clay that's used in cat litter, the clumping clay. All of those come from open cast mining in other countries, and I choose not to use those, partly because of the distance that they've travelled, but also because I don't know about the legislation in those countries, and I'm a little bit wary of the impact that that kind of mining might have on the environment. So I choose not to use those. This does the job very well, and I've been growing cacti and succulents in this kind of mix for a long time. If I don't have one of the products at a particular time and I'm in a hurry, if I haven't got any sand, I just use more gravel. If I haven't got gravel, I use more sand, and vice versa. 1/4 of my mix is usually topsoil. That's often a byproduct of the building industry. As towns expand and buildings are put up, the topsoil is often stripped and sold off. So it's not good for the environment, but this is a waste product that would be buried under roads and buildings. So I do make use of that. It's often very sandy, which again aids drainage. And then the final product that I use in this mix, another 1/4, is the peat-free compost. The reason I don't use peat is because peat environments are very precious. They're precious in their own right, so the wildlife that lives on them is unique. And a fabulous example of that would be the carnivorous sundew. Peatlands also hold water as well. So by holding water, they become the source of our drinking water that feed many of our river systems. And peatlands themselves store carbon too, so very valuable for climate change. The nature of peat means it's been used by the horticultural industry for a long time, and the demand by us and by growers producing our vegetables and our fruit and house plants and garden plants has been huge. And as a result, many peat bogs have been stripped. The legislation in this country has increased in order to protect what's survived, but often those last remnants of peat bogs are suffering because the surrounding land has been stripped. These islands of peat bogs are often draining. And there's very few left. So in lowland Wales, in Shropshire, many of these have now gone. And unfortunately, the demand has then gone to other countries. So peat is being stripped from other countries, which of course is not right. So I would strongly advocate not using peat at all. And there's plenty of alternatives. So when it comes to buying peat-free compost, you need to look really hard. I really, really wish that companies would have better labelling on their products. But this is a reasonable example. This is a peat-free compost, and what I love about this is it's categorically peat-free, 0% peat content, naturally peat-free. So that's great. So I've bought this product. It does tell me what the ingredients are in here. To be fair, it's not very clear. It says biofibre. It doesn't actually say what that is. West Plus, it doesn't say what that is. And then Koya, which I'll come on to later. But there is an FSC badge on it. And the FSC is a standard that implies it's from a sustainable source. And is probably a byproduct of a forestry industry. And with that, there should be some benefits to wildlife as well. So it's to a certain standard. So I'm fairly comfortable about using this. The worst products I find are going into garden centre and finding sacks that might just use words like organic compost. And it doesn't actually say what it is. Well, I would suggest if it doesn't say what it is, that it's 100% peat. And they're the kind of products that I'm avoiding completely. So better labelling, please. And that, of course, applies to every product. The sand, the grits, the gravels, the vermiculite. Where are they from and what impact do they have on the environment and what's being done to reduce that impact? This one is actually in a sack made from recycled plastic. So bonus points to that company. But I'm not advocating any one company. They all need to improve. Another option for peat-free is the Koya, which is not dissimilar to peat. So I can see why growers and many gardeners like to use it, and I've used it myself. But what's putting me off using more of this in the future is the fact that it's just travelled such vast distances. In theory, it's a byproduct from other industries, but it's come halfway around the world. And really, when we can have peat-free products locally, why don't we use those? So it is possible to get peat-free products that are just produced in your local countries from composted materials, from the byproducts of other industries such as the forestry industry. I've tried a number of products recently and all of them have been very good. In the past they tended to be a little bit fibrous, but if you do have one that is fibrous or you want a finer compost for your plants, then of course you can put them through a sieve and that way remove any of the fibrous material that you might not want. So in summary, the mix that I'm using is sand, grit, topsoil and peat-free compost, and I'll adjust that according to what I've actually got and what the plant is. And when I talked in a video about what's in a name, if you know the name of your plant, then do look it up and you can find out where it's from in the world, what the soil it actually grows in is like, and then you can tweak the mix to match, and that's what I typically do. I hope that's been helpful and I've shared a few ideas. If you've enjoyed this video, please like it, share it and subscribe. Thank you.